Go live. We're live. Okay. Sorry, that was probably really loud. Anyways.
Let's go. I found Christ in my life, changed. He saved my soul, now say his name. Yeah, Jesus is my Novocaine. Yeah, Jesus is my Nova. Jesus go save.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Revolution Podcast. I don't have my headphones on. Probably gonna do the intro again. I don't know. I like the intro, so I'll probably do it again. I do what I want. Okay. Hopefully that helped. I don't know if that helped. Alright, let's try that again. We're learning here.
Jesus go save him. I found Christ in my life, changed. He saved my soul, now say his name. Yeah, Jesus is my Novocaine. Yeah, Jesus is my Nova.
Alright. So, welcome to the Revolution Podcast. I am here solo today. A couple things I want to go over before we get started. Take those off for now. New studio. I think for a while at least this is going to be my main studio where I am doing the podcast. I know I think every podcast except for the Ian ones have been in a different studio, which even the Ian one had a different background. So this is going to be the studio for now. I built an altar. We're going to continue to grow with this background. This isn't the main setup. I kind of just threw this all together yesterday afternoon, and then I added a little bit today. We got our Bible right here. We got the lava lamp. I got a little chalkboard, so in case you're ever not knowing, you can see that we are on the Revolution Podcast number 5, 5th episode, and it's going to be my testimony night. I got this cross. I'm not an artsy person, which I'm kind of glad you can't see it very well. This TRP is, my initials. It looks so terrible the way I painted it, but it looks decent from your view. At least I think so. I don't know. Let me know. Okay, sorry. I'm making sure everything's going on. So, before we get started, I want to say I am a little nervous for this episode because I've shared bits of my testimony and I've written it down and shared it before. Never to this extent. It's never been this specific and this vulnerable. And that's why it took so long for me to get this episode together. This is the 5th episode and you're just now getting to hear my testimony. But I wanted to make sure that it was the best possible way I could get it. And for now, I think that's where we're at. Couple things I wanted to go through is, in this faith journey, a lot of times we have rough patches. And this week was pretty hard for me. I went to church last Sunday. I talked about that a little bit. It was really good. Monday I did my Bible study. And then I also do a Thursday night Bible study, and I missed out on it. There was a storm, and I texted my mentor and I was like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. And then the storm ended up stopping within an hour, and that was like 4 hours before our thing. But I took a nap, and I didn't wake up in time to be able to go. So I just kind of felt bad for that. And then, throughout the week, I had been not in my scripture, and I felt far away from God. And then this Saturday night, I was recording a song. I ended up throwing the song away because it wasn't very good. But in the song, and I like to think of my music that I'm making, I like to think of it as kind of a prayer. And I think God knows that. And in this song I was recording, the hook was going to be, God, you know I need you right now. And shortly after, I ended up stopping halfway through because I realized it didn't sound good. But God still heard what I was saying, and He used a good friend of mine, my pastor's daughter. She messaged me. Well, she messaged our group chat and was like, "Hey, we're gonna have a worship night tonight." And I didn't want to go. You can probably tell this by watching the podcast or listening, whatever you're doing, but I am not very social. I'm not. I'm trying this. I've been trying a lot to step out of my comfort zone and to be more social and get into environments. And she was saying that she was gonna go by herself, and she was like, "I only know one person that's gonna be there, so don't feel uncomfortable. I won't know anyone either." And I mean, immediately I responded, "I'm gonna be there. You know, I will definitely be there. I won't miss it." Then a little bit after that, a couple hours, not a couple hours, like maybe an hour, maybe half an hour before it was time to get ready to go, I started thinking, I don't want to do this. And I just felt God was like, no, you need to do this. And so I did. And God works in amazing ways, because whenever I went, I met some amazing people, and we went around the circle in between songs every now and then, and we would say, people would share their stories, share their testimonies. And I was like, I really want to share mine. But I was shy and nervous, and I was fearing what these people were going to think. And it was like, I can't do it. It was worry. I was worrying, really, is what I was doing. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. I'm not going to be able to do it. And then God was pulling it out of me. You know, He was like, you need to share, you need to share, you need to share. So finally, probably at the last opportunity I would have had to share, I shared. And I felt, the reason I shared was because I told myself, I said, this is so selfish of me to be sitting here listening to all these people get vulnerable and share their story with me, who's a stranger, but I can't share mine with them. That is selfish. And so I ended up sharing just like a little part of my story. And it went very well, you know. A lot of people came up to me and was like, that was powerful. Thank you for doing that. And I met someone very special. God definitely orchestrated this event for me to meet this young lady. Her name is Samantha. We've been already talking about, she has her own podcast. It's called Linking Ladies on Spotify. Go follow, go listen. I was actually kind of just listening to a little bit of that before we started here. But so we've been talking about me going on their podcast and her coming on my podcast. And so stay tuned for that. That'll be great. Next week, I'm planning on having my mentor on. And I think that that's going to be an amazing episode. Because if you haven't noticed, right, my guest interviews / debates have really been debates. And it's because they're not in faith or as far into faith as I am. Or interested. They're not very interested in faith. And you know, this is a faith-based podcast, and I've been telling everyone, really, I want to move away from doing debates, and I don't want to be debating people and trying to entertain for clicks, right? I want to lead the audience into faith. And so Sorry. I'm going to be gearing these next couple of episodes more towards testimonies and faithful or spiritual people who have a relationship with Christ, so they can help kind of lead and share their stories. So I've met a couple people that night who I'm going to end up bringing on, but Samantha herself, I talked to everyone there for a couple minutes, but whenever I went to talk to Samantha, we talked for hours until we got kicked out of the, not kicked out, but the worship night was over and everyone was leaving. So we walked out together, and then she ended up leaving her Bible, so I let her borrow mine, or one of mine, and then it was at my church, so I went and grabbed her Bible the next day, Sunday morning. And then Sunday afternoon we met up again, and it was supposed to be a short exchange because she has a lot of work to do. She's an entrepreneur. She works for herself, and she had a lot of work that she had to get done. So we were supposed to just meet up and exchange Bibles, and then that was going to be that. And we sat there and talked for another, I think, an hour and a half. And, we just keep having very spiritual, amazing conversations. And so I've been, I even told her yesterday, I was like, these conversations are podcast conversations. These are great conversations we're having, and I wish that the audience could tune in with us. So, anyway, sorry about my little rant. We're going to go ahead and... Why is my... Oh, it is on. Okay. Let me get my notes pulled up. But yes, so worship night, amazing. God worked in beautiful ways. You could feel that it was God in that room, or even in the building, just making things happen all over. She even said she went up to her friends afterwards, and they were like, "Dang, you missed what God was doing in this place," and she was like, "No, I didn't." She was like, I was present. God was doing something with us while he was doing something with y'all. And, I'm just so thankful that I went. But anyways, back to the podcast. I'm back on Twitter. I took a lot of time away from my Twitter because, hold on, sorry. Is my audio right? Is this happening? I'm pretty sure this is right. Sorry, guys. Double checking. Okay, yes, we're good. Anyways, so I am back on Twitter. Let's pull that up. I got off of Twitter because I've decided, or I realized that it's not good for you. Even with Elon being the Twitter guy, it's still kind of just the same thing to make you upset and get you aggravated at the world, right? So I decided I'm going to get back on Twitter, but it's going to be completely faith related. I'm not going to be feeding into any of the drama on here, right? And I had some stuff that I wanted to cover. Some topics that have been going on with John Cena and the Oscars, and the Tates getting arrested again. But, I've talked to a couple people, and I just decided that, this podcast isn't for that, This podcast is a faith-based podcast, and I shouldn't be shedding light onto darkness in the world like that. So, this is my Twitter you're looking at. Real Jackson Reed, that's my @ all faith things, right? That's inappropriate. But yes, mostly faith things, right? Let's see, I did have a couple of things in my saved that I wanted to... I don't even know how to get to there. Bookmarks. That I wanted to cover. I posted this on Twitter. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Everyone thinks I'm crazy for saying fish are aliens. I'm gonna put the headphones on. Everyone thinks I'm crazy for saying fish are aliens. What is this?
I even have the alien picking up the cow right there.
You do?
Yeah.
What do you think about aliens? What do you think is going on with all that?
I think they're in the water. I think space is a distraction. I think NASA maybe used to be in the water and they seen something that scared the living shit out of them and they never wanted to go back. I don't know.
I'm crazy though, right? I'm the crazy one, even though I think this one might be a little crazy for me to say. I feel like he saw me say that first and then say it, right? The Mexican OT doesn't know who I am or anything about me, but I believe he saw that. This is all Tate stuff. That's John Cena. Okay, so there's nothing worth bringing up on here. So let me go back to my profile. I don't know how to use Twitter on desktop. I'm sorry, but anyways, I'm back on Twitter. I'm back on social media. I'm not on Facebook. Facebook is not good for me. We don't have a good relationship. But I am on Instagram. Real Jackson Reed, Twitter and Instagram. There is a podcast clips channel on TikTok. I don't know how long until TikTok gets taken away. But that is something you can go follow too. Make sure you follow me everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I have a personal TikTok too. Excuse me, sorry. Mostly geared towards music. But if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's all, now, at least, this year, it has been all religious music. I'm on all platforms at Jackson Reed. Instagram is probably the best place to get a hold of me, or Twitter. But yeah, follow me up, right? I changed this channel too, in case you were wondering. This is going to be my podcast channel. I still have all my music videos and stuff uploaded, but yeah, this is for my podcast, not for my music. I have another page that's strictly just music. It's Jackson Reed Topic. It's my distribution page. That's about it. I'm not a big fan of social media. I'm on it, and I don't think I should be, right? And I don't think anyone should be. I think social media was... I heard this on Joe Rogan podcast. Social media is given to us for free from the government in exchange for your information. And people don't understand the value that information has. Hold on, my phone keeps going off and I want to turn it off. But, you know, your information is very valuable. And people just give it away for free so they can watch TikToks. Which, I mean, I don't watch TikToks, but I mean, I do watch, like, Reels on Instagram and stuff. And... like, you either give it away to consume or you give it away to create, but either way you're giving away your information, which is more valuable than anything you can get on the internet, right? Now, let's get into a little bit of faith, right? So today, this morning, I met with my mentor, and we were talking about God, because that's what we talk about. And he told me a story about, in one of his groups, a guy was sharing a very dark story. Right, a story from his past. He grew up in an abusive household. And he was telling a story about one time where his dad was very angry, and he kind of was like holding him up against the wall, feet not on the ground by his neck. And one of the other guys in the group said, okay, you're not going to want to do this, but I want to put you back in that situation. Go back to that and find Jesus in that room. Find Christ sitting in that room. And I mean, that kind of like gave me chills, and that kind of a little bit. I got a jacket on, but it gave me chills again, just saying it on camera, and it was like, I think that's a very healthy exercise, and that's something I'm gonna start working on. Is I have it written down is go to your darkest place in your life and find Jesus. Find where Jesus is in that situation. And you know, like I said, I've wrote it down as your darkest place. But even in bad situations, you know, we still have things we're dealing with on the daily. Something can go wrong every single day. And even then, whenever things go wrong, put yourself back in that situation, as uncomfortable and scary and dark as it is. Put yourself back in that situation and find Jesus. And, you know, let's learn what happens there. No chats yet. Okay. So, anyways, I'm going to leave some space towards the end. So if you're watching live and you have any questions or anything about my testimony, about faith, questions about anything, you know, I'll answer all the questions. You can send them in the chat. I had some on my Instagram for my Instagram story. If you don't have me on Instagram, get me. But if you didn't get the chance to see the story and you didn't get to send your questions through there, put them in the chat. I will read those and I'll go over some of those. Or I'll go over them all, sorry. And with that being said, I'm nervous. Let's start my testimony. I need somewhere better to put this. My mentor and I recently had a talk, and I told him a part of my story. And he gave me this idea of writing it down. And I told him, you know, I've written it down, but I've never really written it down in depth. And I said, I've written it down a couple different times throughout my life. And before it was my testimony, it was just my life story. But, or it wasn't my life story, it was just my story. But my mentor asked, he was like, you need to write it down and just share it with somebody. And I was like, I can share it with my podcast. So that was kind of where this idea came from. And then, you know, we talked the next week, and I told him how, like, I'm not even halfway through it, and it's very long. I mean, I just kind of, can you see, wait, I'm not looking live. I'm not live. Can you see on here, like, we got a lot to go over today, but some of those at the end were some questions off of Instagram. But, you know, I was kind of explaining to him how long it was and just how much was coming out of me, how much God was pouring out of me to share. And, you know, he stopped me and he was like, okay, are you writing your testimony out or are you writing your life story out? And I sat and thought about it for a minute, and I said, you know, it's funny that you asked that, because I feel like my life story is my testimony. Because if any of the events in my life went any differently than what they have been, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I don't know if I'd have the relationship with Christ that I have today. So, my life story is my testimony. That's why it's so long. But, with that being said, I often get a lot of questions. Well, a question a lot of times. And it's, what's your denomination? What's the best denomination? What are the differences between Catholicism and Christianity? You know, just a lot of denominational religious questions. And so I wrote down That wasn't on my Instagram or anything like that. That was like people asking me in real life. And I wrote down, people often ask me my denomination or my religion, and the best way I can respond, religion means nothing to me. I am a man who is working on building my relationship with Christ. My Creator gave me a book that teaches me how to do that, so I try to live my life as close to that book as possible. But religion, I've often heard spirituality is like a big thing right now, and I guess some people like it because it's like religion without rules, and I've heard a lot of people dislike it for that exact reason. It's like the lazy version of religion. It's you wanna believe in God without having to do anything. And I'm kind of in the middle where I think religion is pointless, almost. Don't grill me for that. Religion is not what you should be chasing. Religion isn't what you should be worried about. You should be worried about having a relationship with Christ. And that doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want as long as you believe in Jesus Christ. That means that if you have a true, real relationship with Christ, you're gonna live by His word simply because you want to make Him proud. God is our Father in heaven. And I mean, think of your earthly father. I've used this before in my first episode. Think of your earthly father. You don't want to disappoint him. Why would you want to disappoint God? Maybe they have different rules. Maybe they have different... I know my earthly father's rules aren't follow the Bible. But it's like, I don't want to disappoint my Father in heaven. And I'm willing to disappoint my earthly father if he's trying to get me in any way to disappoint my Father in heaven, and I feel like you want to follow God's word because of the relationship you have with Him. If you truly love God, why would you want to do things that would upset Him, right? Now, with that being said, this isn't written down, but with that being said, we all slip up. Everyone makes mistakes. No man can live a sinless life except for Jesus Christ. However, you can try your best, and that is the point. The point is to try your best to live a sinless life rather than sinning and then praying for forgiveness and doing it again. My song Repent actually just dropped today. I posted on Instagram. It was dropping on Wednesday. I had my dates mixed up, and it's out now, all platforms. I'll link it in the description. But yeah, repent, I say. No, I didn't even say this in that song. But anyways, repentance is good, but you don't repent to do it again. You repent because you're acknowledging what you did was wrong, and you're asking for the strength to overcome that temptation, right? Anyways, let's get started. I'm sorry, but I hope you enjoy. If you're on the fence about your faith, I hope that this testimony will be what gives you that extra push, what pushes you over and leads you to God. Because, I am 100% believe everyone needs God. God is for everyone. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll read them towards the end. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this with someone who you think this would help. Whether they're faithful, whether they're not faithful. If you think my story in any way, someone could relate to it, or it could help someone grow or feel better, share this with them. Don't be scared to share it with them. Anyways, let's begin. Let me take a drink, and then we'll begin. I'm showing y'all the brand, I'm sorry. Sponsor me. W Celsius. Alright. So my story starts at a very young age. It starts when I was 2 years old on the day that I was supposed to die. After being in a fatal car accident, the doctor said that I wasn't going to make it, but God said that He wasn't done with me yet. But that wasn't enough for me. Saving my life was not enough for me to chase after God. I mean, I was 2 years old. I didn't really know any better. But, whenever I was old enough to realize what He had done, I wasn't sold, right? So around 6, my family started going to church, and I just wasn't into it. I didn't want anything to do with it. My mom took us to church on Sunday mornings, and to me, all it was time that I couldn't spend playing, time that I couldn't spend on my video games or playing outside, doing whatever I wanted to do. I had to sit in this room and listen to this guy talk about things that I didn't understand. Now, I did go to Sunday school, and it's so embarrassing to tell this story. I did go to Sunday school, and in Sunday school, I intentionally got into trouble so that they would tell my mom so that I would not have to go to Sunday school anymore. Because I've never liked being away from my family. I've always loved my family, right? And we'll get deeper into that in the story. And I normally blame the church itself, which is common. People have bad church experiences all the time. And I'm not going to sit here and say that church was a good church. But I never tried to let it be a good church. So I completely blame myself. I didn't even try to look into it because all those people were wearing suits and it didn't seem real to me. I'm from the country. I'm from Alma, Arkansas. That's where I grew up, and we dress in overalls and bet coins to see what you can do with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I don't mean just eat it, right? So when we started going to church, it didn't feel real to me. I got baptized. I didn't even know what that meant. I was 6, but there was a lot of things from that age that I forgot. I don't remember a lot of things from being a 6-year-old, but I never forgot getting baptized. Oh, sorry. This was this different paragraph. I'm sorry. I'm trying to read this as I speak, and then I was like, that doesn't make sense, but it's a different part of the story. So, drugs, specifically methamphetamine, were always a very big part of my life. My parents battled addiction for the better part of 40 years. My dad is 54 years old today, and I guess it would be more like 30 years, because, yeah, he would have been 14, so closer to 30 years, probably less than that, but a long time, my entire life. My dad is 54 years old, and by the grace of God, he has been completely sober for the past 7 years. My mother battled with addiction her entire life until it finally got the best of her in January of 2020. May the Lord bless her precious soul. And actually, I just want to take a moment and say happy heavenly birthday to my mother. Today is her birthday. She scared us all in 2011. I was maybe it was 2011, 2010, somewhere in between there. I don't remember exactly, but I was about 7 or 8 years old, and she was hospitalized for multiple strokes, but I never prayed. It wasn't a part of my life. It was something that I knew about, but I didn't want anything to do with it. I never prayed for my mom. After everything I seen, after everything I saw in my life growing up to 7 or 8 years old, I never saw a reason to pray. But thinking now, maybe there was infinite reasons for me to pray. So we had to get separated from her and move in with our aunt and uncle who had lived in Loveland, Colorado at the time. But for me, I didn't quite understand what was going on in that situation until I was probably about 11 years old. Now, at this time, my dad had moved up with my stepmother, and my brother and sister and I moved in with them. I moved in first because I got in a lot of trouble with my aunt and uncle, and so like as soon as my dad moved up, I moved in with him and my grandma before he even had a place. I moved up with them. There was never a time that I was more thankful to be the youngest child in my family because of my stepmom at the time, who has recently passed away, rest in peace. But she would sit me on her lap. Like I was a baby, she'd sit me on her lap, and I was really not a baby. It was probably weird that she was sitting me on her lap, but she would just tell me how much she loved me and how good of a kid I was and how adorable and this and that. But then she would turn around and tell me how much she just hated my brother and my sister. And I thought it was the funniest things in the world, especially towards my sister. Me and my sister had like kind of a rivalry our entire lives. Until I realized that it wasn't a joke. Especially towards my sister. She actually hated my sister very badly. She would intentionally set her up to get her in trouble with my dad. She would talk terrible about her all the time. She would talk terrible to her all the time. And, I completely 100% believe that woman had demons inside of her. So anyways, my brother, who was 16 at the time, he had issues with going to school. He'd get there every single day. He'd get to school every day that he was supposed to be at school. He was there. And he would leave. Just leave. Sounds like a lot of people I know. Sounds like me in later years of high school, 11th grade specifically. But, he never really made it past first or second period. Or second hour, whatever you call it where you're from. But every single day, every day, I remember, about 5 o'clock, my dad would get a phone call from the school. And every single day it sounded like, it was like an automated message, and it was like, your student, Jacob, has an unexcused absence in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th period. Thank you. And then I'd hang up. And whenever he got home, he would get on to my brother and he would tell him, you need to stop skipping school, da 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 da. My dad was never very harsh. Especially with my older brother, he was very gentle with him. He was, I want to say, the most harsh on me, because I got spanked a lot. But it was, it wasn't undeserved. My dad, I believe in discipline. And my dad was a great disciplinarian, but maybe he could have been a little more disciplinary with my brother. I don't know if that was the right way to word that at all. But this literally happened every day for a few months until one time, I'll never forget this. I was supposed to be reading books, and the book at the time, it was it wasn't Roderick Rules, because I read that one. It was Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Dog Days, which is like the only book in the first 10 of that series that I didn't read. I haven't read any of, I want to say 9, because I didn't read anything after like middle school of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Or after elementary school, actually, yeah. And then, so, my dad, he wanted to test me. Every time I said I finished a book, he would test me on it, and he'd take the book, he'd open it up, and he would read something out of it and be like, and then he'd make up a question off of what he just read. And now that I'm thinking about it, that doesn't sound very easy to me. I think that was more difficult for him than it was for me to come up with those questions. But anyways, he would make sure I was reading these books, so he would quiz me. And there was one time, so this was Roderick Rules, because I wrote down, I was excited for the quiz because I actually read the full book. You know, I knew I was ready for this quiz. I was like, test me. I remember normally he would like check on me and be like, did you finish your book yet? And I'd be like, no. This time I went up to him and was like, test me. Here's the book. Get your questions. I'm ready. And, you know, so we started going through questions, and all the other times he would test me, I would get something wrong, or, you know, because I remember, like, reading parts of the book, you know, just kind of trying to guess. You know, like, whenever you're taking a quiz that you didn't study for, or a test that you didn't study for, and you're, like, making your best guess, that was me with what to read. I was like, okay, maybe he'll ask me about this part. So I would read certain parts of the book, and then, fail the test, obviously. But this time I read the whole book cover to cover, and I knew I was going to pass, so I was excited for this test. Sorry, I just thought something was going on. Anyways, so I was excited for the test, and in the middle of it, I mean, he's asked me about, we would do 10 questions, he asked me maybe 4 or 5, and then the phone rings. And it says, your student, Jacob, had an unexcused absence in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th period. Thank you. And I mean, I watched my dad's face turn red in that moment. It was live. You know, like I saw it happen. I saw him turn red. And he started to realize that my brother wasn't understanding or wasn't caring about what he was telling him. And I mean, it was anger, like full-on anger, right? Now, quick disclaimer, this was back before discipline wasn't illegal. You were able to discipline your children, so bear with me here. But my brother thought that he was tougher than he was, so my brother thought that he was tougher than he was. I don't know why I even included that, sorry. But anyways, so back to the quiz. We made it through a couple more questions, and I was smiling, dancing around. I was like, yeah, I got him right. And then he was in the middle of another question when the doorknob, I'll never forget, it was like, you know, whenever you're a kid and you can have like weird, specific, vivid memories of things that make no sense. Like, for example, I don't remember a lot from that quiz, but I remember in the middle of his question, I saw the doorknob turn, and I knew that it was about to get real, you know? And, so yeah, I saw the doorknob turn, and my dad just stopped and looked at my brother. And as my brother walked in, my dad, he threw the book at him. And then he ran, and he, kind of like in that story I shared before, you know, I even told my mentor, I was like, I kind of have a memory similar to that. Because he grabbed my brother by the neck and pinned him up against the wall, and he was, you know, just yelling at him. He didn't hurt him at all, but he was trying to scare him. And after that, my brother ran to his room crying, and my dad went back and sat down. And I was just standing there, and I was like, so no more quiz? We're not doing that anymore, right? No. The next day rolls around. 3 o'clock comes, and it was a different phone call today. And it wasn't an automated message, I don't believe. It was a principal or someone involved in the school. And it said, your student Jacob, does he still attend school here? Is like he going to a different school? What's going on here? And I mean, my dad was just livid. You know, he like thought he scared the life out of him yesterday, and he's just doing the same thing again. And my brother knew what was going to happen when he got home. He knew that he was going to get probably hit. So he didn't make it home. He ran away, and after about 3 months of us searching the entire neighborhood, searching all of his friends' houses that we were aware of, searching everywhere around the city for my brother, and we never found him. And my dad gets a call. You're a student, Jacob. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But it was the Loveland Police Department, and he said, "Hey, we found your son. You need to come down here. He's in a lot of trouble." My brother, then that night, he was arrested. He broke into over 30 cars, and he had a possession of methamphetamine charge. My dad, who had his own battles with that specific substance, didn't take it very well because he knew the path that my brother was going down. I remember sitting in my brother's room and listening to him tell me all kinds of stories. This is a little later on. Telling me all kinds of stories that to me sounded cool. You know, I thought that was like a cool lifestyle to live. Because to me, my brother was a gangster, you know, and I wanted to be a gangster like my big brother. I didn't really know the difference between right and wrong, right? So then he tells me this one story about him sitting around a room kind of like this, I'm assuming, maybe a living room, and he was sitting around and he was with his friends, and they said, "Hey, you want to try some meth?" And he told them yes, but he said, "I'm only ever going to do this one time and never again." My brother has always, in my opinion, been the best big brother you could ever ask for. Then, whenever it was time for him to start going back to school, he cut off his ankle monitor and he ran away. For a few months, this time I can't remember if he got arrested again or if he ended up coming home, but he was out doing meth the entire time. After he told me that he was never going to do it again, he told them, even, his friends, that he never wanted to do it again, he just wanted to do it that one time. I don't know if I can hear that. Can you hear that? Hold on. I hear that. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but something's going on outside. Anyways, so the entire time, one time after leaving court, my dad was talking to, I wrote him, but he was really talking to all three of us about Child Protective Services, and if my brother couldn't stay out of trouble, then they were going to come take us to a foster home. Now, me being the dumb kid that I was, I will never forgive myself for this, right? And I'm thankful that it happened because of what it did in my life today, but whenever I was going through it, I was so upset, right? And I just couldn't believe that I did this, right? And it was, I went up to my bedroom and I wrote down a list of pros and cons about going to a foster home. Cons I had, these are just some that I remember. I will miss my family. I'll have to move. I never liked moving. We moved around a lot, like different houses, and I hate moving because of that, probably. But they could be meaner than my dad is. My dad will probably be sad. What if me and my siblings get separated? That was my list of cons. My pros were they might have an Xbox One. This was whenever the Xbox One first came out. And I was still on the Xbox 360. All my friends got the PS4 because everyone knows the PS4 is better than the Xbox One. But me, being the Xbox kid, I liked Xbox. And I didn't know the difference between the two because I never got to try them. So I wanted to get the Xbox One. And they might have better siblings. And believe it or not, I was sold on that. I decided going to a foster home wouldn't have been such a bad thing. Around this time, I was probably about 12, just about to turn 13, and my brother had us believing that he was doing good. He had his own place. He was 18. He had his own place. He had a good girlfriend, had a good factory job, and my dad supporting me and still my sister at the time, and a woman who didn't work, couldn't afford to live in Colorado anymore. So we all sat around and talked about moving back to Arkansas. I didn't want to move, but I didn't have a choice. But I mean, it doesn't take a 12-year-old to tell you that opportunistically Arkansas was about 20 years behind where Colorado was. Like, I will say, if we stayed in Colorado, I'd probably be a lot farther in my podcast than what I am now. But, and in my careers in general. But my sister, she was 17, she turned 18 in less than a month, and she said that she wasn't going to leave her boyfriend no matter what, she'll run away, and she was going to stay in Colorado with him. And after a long argument / debate, more of an argument with my dad, he said, you know what, you're basically an adult now. If that's what you want to do, I can't stop you. So he took so she got emancipated. It's legal. But, and she stayed in Colorado. My dad took off a few weeks before us to go down to work. Now, I didn't know much about drugs at the time, but looking back to this part of the story, it was definitely drugs. Me and my stepmom were driving from Fort Collins, Colorado to Fort Smith, Arkansas, which I looked up while I was writing this, so I would be correct. And that is a simple 12-hour drive, right? If you leave at 6 in the morning, you'll get there at 6 p.m. Roughly, right? It was less than that. It was like 11 hours and 57 minutes. So, but counting gas stops and stuff like that, and you know the drill. This 12-hour drive, it took us 5 days to complete this drive. Let's see why. Night 1, we left the house and stopped at a McDonald's still in Fort Collins for dinner. And she decided we're going to stay here and sleep in the car tonight, and then we'll drive in the morning. The next day, we drove about 30 minutes, pulled off on the side of the highway, and slept there. The third day, we finally made it into Kansas. We got a hotel room. The fourth day, we drove for a while with nap breaks about every hour. And the fifth day, we made it to Roland, Oklahoma. For those of you who don't know, that's about 15 minutes away from Fort Smith, Arkansas, where we were going. And we stopped in Roland. She got a hotel room, and then she called my Aunt Dottie. Now, for those of you who don't know, gambling is illegal in Arkansas. I didn't know this at the time. I didn't understand what was going on. She wanted to stay in Roland because they had a casino in Oklahoma. Roland Casino, I think it's called Cherokee Casino. She was going to go there. So she called my Aunt Dottie, and blessed be her, she's amazing. I love you, Aunt Dottie, for watching this. Took me to her house, and I spent Christmas break with her and my mom. My mom never fully recovered from her strokes, so she was living with my Aunt Dottie, and my Aunt Dottie was like her caretaker. After spending that time with them, my stepmom picked me up, and we went and stayed at the Garden Lodge Motel in Fort Smith, Arkansas. I will never forget waking up that morning. And in Colorado, let me quick disclaimer. In Colorado, we have bugs, but we didn't have roaches, right? That wasn't a thing there. Like, you heard about roaches because my people were from other places where roaches existed, but we never saw them in real life. And I woke up and I saw the largest cockroach. I mean, that big. And it was crawling next to me in the bed. And this was a queen-sized bed that I was sharing with a 380-pound woman. And I was 13. And we had a little love seat in the motel room, right? But her son lived in a tent in Fort Smith. So whenever we got the motel room, she went and picked him up. And he was staying with us on the love seat. He was very on drugs. I knew that from just looking at him, even though I didn't really know much about it. And so yeah, I didn't really have any other options besides to share this queen-size bed with this woman who was the size of the bed. And where am I at? Sorry. I messaged my aunt that I lived with in Colorado. Now, I wrote this in a confusing way. My aunt and uncle moved to Colorado, or moved from Colorado to Arkansas shortly before we did. I'm not 100% sure why, but I know that they did. I think it was my cousin. She didn't have very many friends in Colorado, or they moved from Colorado to California, and then in California she didn't have very many friends, so they moved to Arkansas. And then and probably financial reasons too, right? I'm assuming, like, just move because your daughter can't make friends. But anyways, back to the story. I messaged them and was like, hey, can I stay with you guys until my dad's able to get a real place? And that's where the fun part begins. I know we're almost an hour in now, and I'm just now getting started with the good part. Let's check and see if we got any chats. No, we don't. Alright, so, I need to stop looking down. Anyways, can I, do it like this? Anyways, my dad ended up getting involved with some of his old friends whenever he moved back down there, and fell back into his addiction. So I ended up staying with my aunt, uncle, and cousin from January until April. Believe this was 2016, I want to say. Not 100% sure, but I think so. No, this was 2017. Because I remember making my mom watch the XXL freestyle with Kodak Black 2016 that December. So in January it would have been 2017. So I was 13. That's... My math isn't math in here, but somehow in this part of the story I'm 13. Wait, no, that does make sense, because in 2013 I would have been 10. In 2016 I would have been 13, right? Okay. Because I was born in 2003. So, when I would go and visit my mom, she was moved to an assisted living facility simply because my Aunt Dottie had a disabled husband and worked full-time jobs, so she couldn't really take care of both of them on her own. So they found this amazing... My mom's very heavy Christian. I said in my testimony, if there was one thing, or at worship night, whenever I shared part of it, I said, if there's one thing I could have done in my life to make my mom happy, it would have been give my life to Jesus Christ. And I never did. So she would never fully recover from her stroke. So one time she told me that my dad, who I've grown up with my entire life, wasn't my biological dad. And she told me that my biological dad's name was Larry. I won't say his full name just for privacy. But I ended up finding him on Facebook, and I met him for the first time in March of 2017. Now, if you're listening very carefully, you notice something wrong here. And we're about to get there. I started seeing him maybe once a week. And after I got caught using marijuana with... I'm sorry. As a former marijuana user, I can't say it like that. I got caught smoking marijuana with their youngest son. And my aunt and uncle decided to sign to them full custody in April after meeting them for the first time in March. Let that sink in. Him and his girlfriend, well, it was to him, but like, I lived with his girlfriend, he lived with his girlfriend, so I lived with his girlfriend and her kids, and it was like she was the dictator of that house. When I first moved over there, the first rule I had was I wasn't allowed to speak with my family, right? So My dad, let's go back to my list of pros and cons. What if me and my siblings are separated? Check. We were. My dad I wasn't able to speak to. They let me go see my mom. They did let me go see my mom, but I mean, it was like a punishment to them. You know, like if I went to go see my mom, I couldn't take my phone, and I wasn't able to like leave her house or her room. I don't know what to call it, but like I was in trouble for going to see my mom pretty much. And then so I went and saw my real dad, not my biological dad, but my real dad, the man who raised me to be who I am today. I went and saw him and I told him the news. And I often think that this conversation right here was the main reason that he decided to get sober. Now, as a 13-year-old being completely cut off from everyone in my family. Oh, did I not write that part down? Oh. Wait a minute. Oh, I didn't write it down because I was supposed to just grace over it, but I'm going to tell that part of the story real quick. I went and sat in my dad's living room, and he's with my new stepmom, who they're still together. They're both completely sober now. But I sat in their living room, and they were both very high, it seemed to me. And, I was in fear being in that living room. And I'll never forget, I said, I want to change my last name. And I'm going to be staying with my dad, I called him. And I just want you to, I want to make sure that that's okay with you. And he was like, I hate that, but I mean, what am I going to do? I can't stop you. And so I believe that conversation was the main reason he decided to get sober. So I don't regret having that conversation, because I think if we did, then we wouldn't have gotten to where we are today, right? That was what I said at the beginning. Anyways, as a 13-year-old being completely cut off from everyone who was my family destroyed me. And I fell into a very dark place of depression. From then I told myself there was no such thing as God. God couldn't exist. He wouldn't let this happen to me. However, thinking back, the very first gift I had received in that home was an Xbox One. Back to my pros and cons list. The pros: separated from my family, check. Maybe they'll have an Xbox One, check. Alright? So we're gonna move a little faster now. I'm not doing very good on time. I thought I'd be a lot faster than this. So I lived there from the time that I was 13 until the day before I turned 18. I remember I just talked about this with my mentor earlier too. My birthday was on a Saturday that year. They didn't work on weekends, so it would have been very difficult. Would have caused a huge unnecessary problem if I waited until my birthday to move out, because they would not have let it happen very easily. So that Friday, I had a roommate already arranged, so I took all my stuff. I skipped school. I took all my stuff over to his house. I'm a senior in high school at this point. I took all my stuff over to his house and set everything up, and then I ended up driving my car back to their house, leaving it there, and then I had a friend come pick me up and drop me off at my new house. And it was right across from the school, so I didn't have a car, but I was able to walk to school, and I had a girlfriend at the time. We'll get into that in here in a bit. But the entire time I was there, I was living with Larry and Amanda. The entire time I was there, I was experimenting with all kinds of different drugs, doing all kinds of criminal activities to get money to buy these drugs. making it my mission to get back to my family. How I would have done that doing what I was doing, I have no idea, but that's the way a troubled teenager's brain works, right? The siblings I had in that house were, the oldest son was Mateo, who is currently in prison for trafficking methamphetamine. The middle child was Juan. He was literally a marijuana kingpin who is currently addicted to fentanyl. And the youngest, who I was the closest to, was Diego. And Diego was about 2 years older than me. And for most of the time that I lived there, me and him shared a room. Diego was very heavily addicted to Adderall, and his mother would get it for him. I mean, it was like a prescription, right? He had a prescription of Adderall, so she fed into that, right? But he convinced her it was helping him with his ADD, and the doctors will literally prescribe any child in the world with ADD for no reason. So eventually she realized that he was kind of using it to get high, not because he needed it. And so when he was 17, she took him off of it. Mateo was probably my favorite because he treated me like family. And we had a connection because he was addicted to meth, and my brother that I grew up with also had an addiction to meth and those types of issues. I will never forget the time I was 15 years old. This is probably the best and worst part of my entire story. I was 15 years old, and I was getting ready for school one morning, and Mateo was over at the house. He wasn't supposed to be over at the house, but he was there, and he was selling drugs at the time. And I remember I came out of my bedroom to, I was probably getting a water or something. I might have been going to smoke marijuana before school, because that was what I did. And there's just a giant bag, I want to say half a pound of methamphetamine sitting on my kitchen counter. And Mateo was off doing something, probably in the backyard, messing with wires. And Diego wasn't awake yet. My parents were already at work. Obviously, they didn't just do that in front of my parents. But I was sitting there, and well, there went the Bible. I was sitting in that, hold on, let me fix that real quick. I'm sorry, guys. Give me just 1 second. I hate doing it live because I really gotta use the bathroom, and now I don't have a guest here to entertain you guys, so I just gotta hold it until the story's over. Are we good? You chilling? Anyways, this lava lamp's starting to kick on. I've never had one before, so I was kind of nervous about it. And I was like, why is it not lavaing? Why is that not happening? And it works now. Anyways, where was I? Saw the bag of meth sitting on the table, and it just crossed my mind, what is it about this stuff that makes everyone love it so much? They're throwing away their families, they're they're just willing to give up their entire life for this simple little crystal. And it made no sense to me. And I thought the only way I would really ever understand was trying it. And I never tried it before. I only ever heard stories about it from my brother, and some very little. I was young, so my dad didn't shed very much light on it whenever we lived in Colorado. But he would sometimes tell stories about how it ruined his life. And, the most I knew about it was from the commercials, and I mean, those commercials did their job. They scared me. But, trying to not show the logo anymore until they sponsor me. Send this to Celsius. Anyways, there was no one around to tell me no. There was no one around to talk me out of it. And I remember I looked at it very closely, and then it hit me. My brother in Colorado, sitting in his room, when he told me, he was never gonna do it again. And I remember the last time I seen him, he came down to Arkansas, and he rode the Greyhound bus, and I didn't recognize him. I couldn't tell who it was because my brother on drugs is not the same person. He is a stranger and scary. So I told myself, I don't know why, but I can't do this. This isn't the way that my story is gonna go. This isn't who I am. This isn't for me. And I just kept moving, and I probably went to smoke weed and got ready for school. But anyways, this was very shocking to me because I'd never heard much, but mostly what I heard about it was good things. The commercials scared me, but the actual real life, I heard about it. My dad told me stories to try to scare me away from it, but to me it sounded cool. My brother told me stories and pretty much glorified it. And then Mateo, he just glorified it all the time, openly. And at that time I was very depressed, and I would literally do anything to get high. I have been fast forwarding through this kind of part of my life because I don't remember much of it because I was just so under the influence all the time of different drugs. And but I told myself I'd never do meth, and I never did. And so anyways, fast forward, I turned 16. I got very involved with psychedelics, specifically LSD and magic mushrooms. And doing this, I convinced myself one time, I was watching a Mac Miller interview about the divine feminine, and I came to the conclusion from being a 16-year-old on magic mushrooms that maybe there was a God, but if it wasn't what we were taught about. It was a soulmate, and you found God through the person who you fell in love with. And that just sounds blasphemic to me now and horrible, but that's where I was at that time in my life. So I was 16, so I just turned 16 in the beginning of in the end of 2019. So in January of 2020, January 11th, well, let's fast forward. December of 2019, my mom was hospitalized. She was sick with pneumonia, and I told this to one person actually, and it was Saturday night. But I would call her in the hospital, and I remember I didn't like talking to her because she wasn't there all the way, and she was sick, so she really wasn't there all the way at this point. And I didn't know what was gonna happen, so I remember the last time I talked to her, I didn't tell her I loved her, and the last thing I said was, "Just call me tomorrow, I got stuff to do." And I hung up. And the next day, I got the call that my mom passed away. I didn't cry, and I didn't feel anything because I was just so high on drugs that I didn't really comprehend, or it didn't really resonate. It didn't feel real. And when I went to her memorial later that month, it was just me and my biological dad, and my stepmom, his girlfriend, whatever you want to call her, didn't want anything to do with it. And so it was just me and him. And whenever we were there, we sat. I want to say one, it may have been a couple because I wasn't allowed to be around my sister. So I want to say we sat a couple rows behind my sister. And probably the most manly, dadly thing he ever did was, because I was sitting behind her watching her just, it broke my heart seeing my sister like that. I've never seen her cry like that before. And I wasn't able to comfort her. My brother wasn't able to comfort her because he was in prison at the time you can assume. And they didn't let him attend. And so I was sitting behind her and just watching her break down. And I just didn't know what to feel. I just felt numb. And the only time Larry ever did something good in my life was he told me to go sit up by my sister. So I went and I gave her a hug, and right as she laid her head on my shoulder, I just broke down. I just bawled uncontrollably, and I couldn't help it. I couldn't stop no matter what, no matter how hard I tried. I just cried literally from the entire thing until I got back into the truck to go home. And that was like when reality kicked in, like, oh, I don't get to go home to my family. I have to go home to these strangers who I barely know. And I have to act like everything's okay when nothing was okay. In 2021, I started skateboarding and would just get out of the house as much as I could, and I would get high on whatever I could get my hands on. And I remember one time we were at my best friend's house. This is kind of going to lighten it up a little bit. I was at my best friend's house, and my biggest fear was getting in trouble. I never liked getting in trouble, and it wasn't the law. I never was scared of going to jail, because for me, going to jail would have been getting out of that house, which is what I tried to do with all my time anyways. So, but with that being said, I didn't want to get in trouble by my parents, because whenever that happened, I wasn't able to go out, and I wasn't able to even have my phone, and my phone was like kind of my only escape from reality whenever I was at home. So rapper in me, phone home, that's a bar, I gotta remember that. Anyways, so we all took magic mushrooms at my friend's house, and I remember I asked if I could stay the night before we did, and they said yes, and then something changed, and they were like, no, we need you to be home by dark. And I was walking at the time, and in the middle, we were all laid out on the floor, freaking on the moon, and listening to trippy music and all kinds of stuff, and I just noticed a cloud go in front of the sun, and I just said, hold on, let me read what I have written down. I was not even in my body, and then I jumped back into my body and said, which I said a cuss word, but I'm not going to include that in here, and I said, I have to be home before dark. So in the middle of that, I walked home tripping both ways, in my mind and over my feet, because I could barely walk. And I just went straight to my room, and I just stayed up all night out of my body. So in 2022, it was pretty much the same kind of things as 2021, drugs, skateboards, and yeah, that was my life. Until August, right before my school started, I had a job. I was working at TJ Maxx, and right before school started, the girl of my dreams walked through my TJ Maxx line, and I didn't remember seeing her. But my God, my soulmate that I told you guys about, I found her, and the way we met, because I don't remember seeing her, she followed my Instagram, I followed hers back, and I was a teenager, I was like, oh yeah, she likes me. And normally you're wrong about that, but no, she liked me. And she posted something, she knew I was a skateboarder from my post, so she posted a story and was like, I wish someone would teach me how to skateboard, with a seductive picture. And I slowed up and I was like, well, do you got a skateboard? It's kind of hard to learn without having one, right? And then she was like, no, we started talking through that, and then that's whenever she asked me if I remembered her coming through my line at work, and I was like, no. I was like, no, I don't remember that at all. But anyways, I literally was worshiping this girl. We lived our entire relationship in the honeymoon phase for the most part. It was a little over a year, which I know to some of you who have experienced true heartbreak, that doesn't sound like a long time, but I mean, just the experiences and the things that we went through in our relationship, it felt like we were together our entire lives. And one day we were in the middle of a date, and she had to leave early because she was going to a youth group at church. And so I asked if I could come with her, not to go to church, but just because I wanted to be with her. And that was the night I met her mom, and she was the leader of the group. And after hearing her message, I started to wonder what was true. I started kind of wondering about, like me and Levi talked about, the truths of our universe. And I didn't dig too much into it, but I was wondering, right? So I turned 18 and I moved into my friend's apartment, like I said before. This was the same friend who we were at his house that mushroom night. And he had, during the time that we weren't talking, because I was with this girl all the time, gotten addicted to fentanyl. And I was sleeping on his couch for a few months. It was it was probably as good as it could go having a roommate who's addicted to fentanyl. Nothing really crazy happened. He really wanted to get sober, and there was some times where he would go hours upon hours through withdrawals, and he cracked every time, but it was like he was forcing himself to go through this pain because he wanted to be able to make it through. He knew if he could make it through the pain, he would be okay. And I think the longest he made it was 24 hours, maybe a little less or a little more. But I slept on his couch for a few months, and then his girlfriend moved in. And I guess she had lived there before I lived there, and then moved to Alabama or somewhere where her family was to get sober, and she did successfully. Her family helped her. And then whenever she moved back in, it just went all bad. Everything was bad. She wasn't interested in being sober anymore. She saw that he still had drugs, and the first thing she did was use with him. Then he lost interest in getting sober. And then she'd bring her friends over to party every single night. It was drugs, alcohol, and drama. I was still in high school, and this was like an everyday Monday through Sunday type thing. Like there was never a night off. And one night I remember they were all partying, and my friend in front of everyone said that her friends were bad influences because he still wanted to get sober in his heart, but he just gave up on trying. So he told her friends were bad influences and they're trying to bring her down. And then they all told her, no, he's controlling, you need to leave him, da 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 da. And then she got very defensive and was yelling at him. And then he yelled back, and then one of the girls threw something at him and put a hole in the wall. And then he grabbed her phone from her hand. He ripped her phone out of her hand and threw it off the balcony. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And then, not him throwing the phone, but her reaction to it. She was just like, it didn't feel real to her. And then there was just a huge fight. It was kind of like they all ran. Like the anime fights where they're running towards each other. That's kind of what happened. And me, I just sat in the background until I cowardly left. I left my friend all on his own, and then I slept in my car that night. And out of embarrassment, I just didn't stay there anymore. I went the next day and I got my stuff and just moved in with my other friend and his parents until we eventually got our own apartment. Where are we at? Until we got our own apartment. And then things were good for a while, but over time, living with your best friend, you get into arguments and stuff. And I was very feminized by my girlfriend. I was a simp, is what you would call it. And I would just, she was kind of, remember back in the beginning, or earlier in the story, when I said my biological dad's girlfriend was the dictator of the house. She was the dictator of our relationship. I think that kind of trauma had something to do with my place in that relationship, because I just didn't even try to be a man. And, I was a lover, not a fighter, and all kinds of stuff, which I still am, but now I'm masculine about it. Excuse me. And so we just got agitated with each other and started, agitated and arguing more and more every single day. Until one day, I didn't even write this part in, I just wrote tell a story about the fight because I love this story. And it's sad, but I love it. Me and my roommate, best friends for years. One day, about 7 in the morning, we had did an online order for groceries. I went and picked them up while he was asleep. And then, I don't know why, but something was upsetting me, I didn't like having to get up that early to go get the groceries, I think it was. And then, so whenever I got home, I woke him up and I was like, hey, come help me with these groceries. And he was, took him a couple minutes, and I didn't put anything up, I waited for him. And then, I'm like cleaning up around the living room because I see there's like 13. I counted, and I remember counting 13 granola bar wrappers on the floor everywhere. And I wasn't concerned about him leaving them on the floor, it was kind of like a bachelor pad. It wasn't always very clean. But I was concerned about him eating that many granola bars in one night. So, he came out of his room, started putting up groceries, and I was like, dude, who eats 13 granola bars in one night? Like, that's... what? And then he got very upset and was like, I didn't. And I was like, dude, I just picked up your trash. I counted them. I counted the wrappers, and you did. And then he got really defensive and started yelling, and I started yelling, and then he had some anger issues at the time. He grabbed the box of granola bars from the cabinet, what was left of them, and he threw them at the wall. Right, like I'm standing across from him, kind of how you are, and he takes them and goes like that. So I'm thinking he was trying to throw it at me, so I start throwing stuff, and then he starts, and this is, other than the box of granola bars, everything we were throwing was brand new groceries. And he starts throwing groceries, I start throwing groceries. It was like a food fight, really. And then I grab the gallon of milk I just bought, and I was going to throw it at him. And then thinking now, I was probably the Holy Spirit, where I went to throw it at him, and then I threw it kind of how he did the granola bars, but instead of throwing it to the side, I threw it behind me. Now, behind me was the living room. The living room was carpet. The milk busted on the carpet, and then he started trying to fight, right? He, I'm such a Christian, I don't even know what you say. Squared up. He tried to start squaring up with me. And so we were about to box, and then I knew that I was gonna lose, so I left. I grabbed my keys, and I sped. I was going 60 in a 35 or something like that, and I just sped down the road. He starts calling me, and he was like, hey bro, I'm sorry, we shouldn't be fighting. He told me the reason he got so upset was because he thought that I was kind of like making fun of him for being overweight, which he wasn't. But I guess he had gotten made fun of in the past for being overweight, which makes sense why he would get upset. So I was like, okay, whatever. I drive home, and he was waiting for me at the door. And I guess, I don't know if it was like a manipulation tactic to get me home, or if it was a, like while we weren't talking anymore, he like reminded himself that he was upset. I don't know exactly what happened, I wasn't there. But whenever I did get there, he was waiting for me at the door, and he just started yelling, and we were yelling back and forth at each other, and I'm yelling, "Shut the F up, da 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 da." And then, I go in my room, and I lock the door, hoping that, like, you know, if I just stayed to myself, he'd get over it in a minute. He's yelling at me through my door, I'm yelling back through the door, and then he punches a hole in my door comes open, and then I've told the story every time to where it was like I backed up. But I mean, I can kind of see myself, which is what he said I did. I can kind of see myself being like, dude, you just punched a hole in my door running at him. But I don't think that's what happened. I think I did back up, and then like I just got beat like a not gonna make that joke, but I just got beat up really bad. And I mean, it was to the point where like we were fighting. I was punching back, but I mean my hits weren't doing any damage, his hits were. And then somehow I got out of it, and I ran out, and I closed the door behind me, and right as I closed the door behind me, I fell onto the ground, and I was just crying and dry heaving, and I mean, very traumatic experience. I called my girlfriend, and, you know, I was like, please come pick me up, please come pick me up. She was like, what's going on, what's going on? I was like, just come pick me up now, like, hurry up. And then she came and picked me up, and I stayed with her and her parents for that night. Her parents were pretty strict, but in the best way possible. You know, we slept in separate bedrooms, and like there was no PDA, which I mean, you know, as a respectful kid, I'm not gonna do that in front of your parents, anyways. However, I started staying with them for a few months, and then this was really, really good for me. Even though I kind of felt like I was at my lowest, I lost my best friend, and I was being kind of taken care of as a child as I just started getting used to being an adult. And then, at the same time, I got connected with a family that was like a real family from a movie, like something I'd never experienced before. I, stayed in contact with my parents, who I grew up with, my real parents. My new stepmom at the time. She was a new stepmom, but like my dad, you know, I stayed in contact with him, and through being in contact with him, I got to know her. They lived up here where I live now in Springdale, which was about an hour away from Fort Smith, but I was still in school, so I stayed with them until graduation. And then, you know, I shouldn't have graduated, right? You guys have heard my story. This all was happening during school. And, you know, my car ended up dying one day, and I was carless for a long time. And, I mean, I just was getting rides to school from my girlfriend, and then she had an internship before mine, so I had to, like, skip my last 2 classes every single day. And it felt like with all the odds stacked against me, there was one thing. I want to go back a little bit. Sorry, I'm trying to move faster, and it's not working very well. I went and told my foster parents, is what we're going to call them. I went and told them that whenever I turned 18, I wanted to move out. And I told them my plan. I had a roommate set up already. And they weren't going for it. You know, that's kind of why I left the day before my birthday, because I knew that if they were there whenever I was trying to do it, it wasn't going to go well. So my foster mom, right, Amanda, she told me, you know, when a kid moves out of his parents' house before he finishes school, he doesn't graduate. You're going to fail, you're going to drop out, something's going to happen, and you're not going to graduate. And so I just kind of used that as fuel. And I, with all the odds stacked against me, I graduated high school, and I have my diploma to prove it. Now, during this time I was living with my girlfriend, I got the best job I've ever had in my entire life, and sometimes I wish I was still there. I was an EKG technician at the local hospital, and you know, so we're living there, I'm working, she was staying home, and you know, we were just living. And then she started college, and I want to say the woke virus stole my girlfriend. And, I kind of got super down, and then she was gone all the time, and I felt weird just living with her parents and not her being there. And, I was going to church like every week at the time, but, I wasn't going to church for church. I was going to church simply because she was going, and I liked the people at this church. I enjoyed being around good people. And this was kind of whenever I started wanting to be a good person instead of a bad person. And so I would go and I'd kind of ignore the messages, but I would mostly go. She would sing, and I'd love to watch her sing, and just communicate and get to network with some nice, real, genuine, good people. And so whenever she started college, things just went downhill from there. And we ended up breaking up like the first week of college because she was too stressed out to be in a relationship. I got super depressed, and she was staying in the dorms. I was still staying with her parents. That lasted for about 2 weeks until I found my own apartment, and I moved in there. And I got very, very lonely. A lot of people who live alone don't talk about this, but it's very lonely living by yourself. I mean, I got a cat. Didn't really help. So, me and my friend were hanging out a lot, and a different friend, his name was Adrian. We got to hanging out a lot, and then him and his girlfriend had their own apartment, and they ended up breaking up. And where am I at? My friend was going through a breakup, and he asked if he could stay with me for a little bit, and I said, bro, let's just be roommates. Like, I don't like living alone anyways. And then so he started being my roommate for a while. We lived like a party lifestyle, like had people over every night, drugs, alcohol, just all kinds of stuff. We lived a party life for a little bit until I realized that I wasn't getting any better. My depression wasn't going away. I'd been through 2 new girls at the time. I still thought about my ex, and then Andrew Tate saved my life. I remember one day I was like sitting there playing the game. I was playing my game, and I was like, my roommate started telling me about this guy, and I was like, bro, who is this guy? Like, I've been hearing about him a lot through social media. And then, like, I went in the very first video I've ever watched, he was like, look at you crying like a little B-word. Woo, why'd she leave me? You need to stop being a bleep and go to the gym. And then, so I was like, bro, what? So I, like, got up and I bought a gym membership that day. And then, for anyone who knows or doesn't know who Andrew Tate is, a big thing that I think he was really famous for was he talks about the Matrix, right? The Matrix. I'm so bad at this. He talked about the Matrix and how to escape the Matrix, and how, like, we lived in a false reality. And I always felt that. I talked about this, I'm not going to go too into it, but I always felt that my whole life, that the world wasn't really what it seemed. And through that, I fell in love with the conspiracy mindset, and I was, like I said before, just starting to search for the truth. And like I said, it got very unhealthy. If you haven't seen my interview with Levi, I talk about this more specifically. But it got very unhealthy, and I kind of felt myself becoming a little bit insane, kind of paranoid. So I was going to shut it down and ignore it. No more conspiracy stuff for me, right? I'll live in the Matrix. Blue pill, right? That's what they call it. And, but something was telling me that, like, I was right on the edge, Everything I was looking for, I just needed to dig a little deeper into the conspiracy space. And so I did. I dug a little deeper, and I found that everything led back to one thing, you know. And if you're into conspiracy, let me just solve it for you. Everything you're looking at goes back to one point, and that point, this world is so evil because it's trying to keep you away from God, specifically away from Jesus Christ. Alright, you can do your own research and see who runs the world and who ordered Jesus to be crucified, and I'm not going to go into that, alright? So I started looking into it myself, and I said, this makes no sense. If Jesus was real, why would he let me suffer so much? Why wouldn't God prove himself to me? Why wouldn't he show me proof of his existence? That's what I would ask myself. Thinking now, that's kind of embarrassing to admit, but that was just my lack of knowledge. Then after studying somewhere, or really later into my faith, I heard a quote, and it said, when God places you in the rain, he's allowing you the chance to grow. And it made sense. I kind of understood why I went through everything I went through after hearing that. And then it took more than me losing the one person in my life who tried to lead me to Jesus Christ. And, the last thing, I told you guys how she got sick and I never prayed for her. One of the last few things she said to me was say a prayer. And I never did. I never prayed. And a few days later, she was gone. And when I learned this, I decided... When I learned that everything was to keep you from God, I decided that he's real, and I need to get my life together. So from then on, I started slightly studying. I was listening to the audio Bible. I wasn't really reading it. I had one that I got from a teacher for my graduation present, but I never opened it. And I wasn't into reading, so I started listening to the Bible when I'd go to sleep and that kind of stuff. And I was learning about sin, kind of how to stay away from it, about what Jesus did, who he was, what he did for us. And I couldn't find a new church because I just didn't click with them. So I waited until my lease ended and I moved up here to Springdale and got reconnected with my family. I started working at a Casey's gas station. Alright, I went from EKG technician at the hospital, great job, to Casey's gas station cashier. And very kind of depressing, dramatic change in my life. Until... Where am I at? Casey's gas station. And I was talking with my parents about looking for a church, and they didn't go to church, so they couldn't really help, but the next day, we walked into work, and I see some random guy I'd never seen before is wearing a Casey's hat, and he's wiping something down, and I'm like, who's that guy? And they said, oh, that's Clifton, he just got hired. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say his name. I didn't think, that's not a problem to say his name, right? Clifton's a great guy. And, they just oh, we hired him. He just got hired today. It's his first day. And I've never met this man in my life. And the first thing he says whenever he hears his name, he looks up and says, welcome to Casey's. Jesus loves you. And, I just felt it in my heart. And I went up and started talking to him. I was like, dude, I'm literally just starting to believe that. I'm accepting that now. Is that, do you have a church that you go to? And then he was like, yes, and he invited me to come to church. And that was my first time at Journey Church. So my first time at Journey Church, it was me and a friend who had moved up here with me. He's back down there. There was some issues went on. I don't want to shed any light on it. But I have a biased opinion that Journey Church in Northwest Arkansas has the best pastor in the world. You can't convince me otherwise. Shout out Pastor Steve. He was very welcoming, and in the very first sermon I heard, it was called Chutes and Ladders, and it was about the ups and downs of life, and it just resonated with me so much. I went in there with high expectations, and I was just trying to find reasons that I didn't like this church and it wasn't the church for me. I needed a different one. And I was wrong. You know, I in the sermon I sat there and bawled my eyes out, and you know, he does this thing whenever we have new people in the building, and oh, I'm not there yet. Yeah, I cried. I bawled my eyes out, and then I cried so hard because in the very first time in my life, I felt the presence of the Holy Spirit. I felt God. I knew there's no convincing me. There's nothing you could do to convince me that He wasn't there in that building. I know He was there. I felt it, and let's see where I'm at. And I haven't lived a day without Him since. Who's calling me? Why are you calling me? I'm trying to tell a story. And my life. So my pastor. Sorry, my pastor is my life. We're tight. He came up and he does this thing whenever we have new people at the church, and he says, if you're new here and this is your first time, and you haven't already given your life to Jesus Christ, and you haven't been saved, and you want to declare that today, and you want to be saved and by Jesus Christ, just raise your hand. And you know, he's very good about, like, whenever you feel uncomfortable, because we all had our heads down and our eyes closed. And I mean, I just immediately rose my hand up to the sky. And you know, everyone came and prayed over me, and my friend did too, but you know, he kind of chose the world later on over God. But I mean, you know, do what you can. And I got saved that day. I got baptized, rebaptized, because I told you I was baptized when I was 6 and I didn't know what it meant, and I lived a life without God that entire time. So I got rebaptized on December 10th of 2023, and I can tell you right now that my life will never, ever be the same to what it was before. I understand that everything in my life was a part of God's plan, and I have recently started telling my friends, like, I can't prove to you that God exists, but I can prove to you the things He's done in my life and how He has changed me. And with the things He's done in my life and the way He's changed me, there's nothing you can do to convince me that He doesn't exist. Like, I know it's real. And we're going to end it there, the testimony part, because, you know, that's just, if you don't have Jesus in your life, He's waiting for you. You're the only reason that you don't know Him. And I love Him. And like I said, there's nothing you can do to convince me He's not real. Now I'm gonna open up the chats. We don't have any. Thanks, guys. I was going to read yours first, but there is none. So, I'll go ahead and pull up I think I have 2 from Instagram. And, the first one is, why is faith important to me? And I've told this story before. You know, I thought about this. I've told this story before, but I never explained why I love the story so much. And it's because it's the reason faith is important to me. Now, I don't know if this is exactly what they meant by asking, but first of all, I have a relationship with Christ, and I want everyone, if you're watching this now, which I don't think you are, but if you watch this later and this isn't what you meant, just send me a message or call me or something, and we'll talk privately about it, and you can explain it more to me. But I'm taking it as, because it was a friend who doesn't believe in God who I've talked to about God a lot, and so I'm thinking he's like asking, why am I pressing faith so much on my friends? And because, like I said, I know what He's done for me, and I know what He can do for you. And you know, it's just like, I heard a story, right? This is the part that I said before. I've heard a story about this guy, I think he was a pastor, he had a dream. And in this dream, he was at the gates of heaven getting ready to meet God. And whenever it finally gets to him, he's like, "Hey, Jesus, I'm so excited to finally meet you. You know, I'm a pastor," telling him who he is. And he's like, "I love you. And, you know, I can't wait to be here. Or I can't wait to spend eternity with you." And Jesus said to him, Matthew 17, I think verse 28. Let me fact check, because y'all are going to get me if I don't. Please be right. I know it's Matthew 17. I don't know if it's 28. Come on, be right. Come on, be right. Okay, well, there's not 28 verses in chapter 17, so I'm wrong. Okay, hold on, I'll find it. Oh, okay. I was way off. Sorry, guys. Matthew 7:21. Well, this is it said 21 through 23, but it's verse 23 is what I'm looking for, and it says, "I will declare," Jesus said to him, "Be far away from me. I never knew you." ESV version says, "I never knew you. Depart from me." And you know, so he was like confused and scared, and so he gets sent to hell, and he's walking around, and there's just kind of like burnt bodies everywhere surrounding, like you can't see the ground because it's just covered in burnt bodies, but he sees this guy who's not dead, or he's in hell, so he's dead, but he's like not burnt on the ground. He's lifting up the burnt faces. He's looking at everyone in the face, and this guy is yelling at him, hey, what are you doing?" And he stops and says, I'm looking for you. You are the person who was supposed to tell me about Jesus Christ." And I literally, like I said, I almost got chills earlier. I just got chills for real this time, telling that, because that terrifies me. You know, that's why I try to plant a seed in all of my friends, because and I've gotten more gentle with it, because some friendships have ended over me trying to shove it down their throat, and you don't want to do that. But I've trying to be more gentle with it, and more of trying to just prove God by the way I live rather than the words I say. But I never, you know, even if I'm able to make it into heaven, I don't want my friends to not be there. I want my friends and family to not be there because they didn't accept Christ, or mostly because I was scared to talk to them about it, you know? And that is why faith is important to me, and that's why I talk about it with everyone. Someone asked, I don't have the messages, I'm on my notes, so I don't know who, or else I would shout both of you guys out on your Instagrams. Someone else asked, what advice would I give to someone who wants to go to church for the first time? And I thought about this one really hard until I thought about myself. And my answer is Nike it. Just do it, you know? In Fort Smith, whenever I stopped going to my church because of the breakup, I started going to different churches. And every time it felt the same because I was starting over every single time. And I just felt like I didn't belong. I felt wrong. It was never that I didn't belong. It was that wasn't the church for me, but it was mostly me, or let's say the enemy, putting that fear into me. And I mean, I was scared to go in. I was scared to talk to anyone. I was scared to be who I am, right? And then you'll find it, right? You'll find it because when I went to Journey Church the first time, I would always sit in the back. I wasn't social. Remember, I said that before. And the first time I went to Journey Church, I sat in the front row. And I mean, I sang out loud whenever we were doing the worship. I introduced myself to a lot of the people there. Most of my relationships now are with people from my church, and that I've met in the past year. I started going to church there in September, and then or maybe even October. Maybe it was later than that. I'm not 100% sure, but it was like not long ago, 6 months max. And then that's most of the people who I live my life with now and I'm friends with. And that was just because I walked in and God told me I was home, And now my dad is a Christian. My dad doesn't believe in church. This is kind of off topic from the question. But I don't want you to go to church for the first time because you think you need it, right? Because my dad doesn't go to church, but he is a Christian. My dad doesn't go to church because he doesn't need it, because it doesn't say in the Bible that you need to go to church every Sunday. It says nothing about that, right? And you're not forced as a Christian to go to church. You're forced to love your God, and you can do that without going to church. Which is not even forced, you're just asked. That's a better way to word that. But, I talked to my friend Levi the other day because I was telling him how he needs to find a church. Lil Ozzy from the second interview, I was like, you just need to find a church for you, bro. And then I was like, scratch that, you just need to get to know God because you don't need the church. That goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Religion is a completely different thing from having a relationship with Jesus. And that's what you need, is a relationship with Jesus. And I said, now me, I choose to go to church every Sunday. Recently I've started going to first and second service. I used to just go to second service. Now I go to both services because I need it. I don't need to go for salvation or to get in heaven or to anything like that. But I need it because George Danko on his podcast, I can't remember exactly the context, but he was talking about this kind of thing about going to church. And how I made a post on Twitter, or it was either Twitter or Facebook when I was on there, something about it a long time ago. And you don't get clean before you get in the shower. You don't go to the hospital if you're not sick or injured. And it's like, I go to church because I need to be healed. God's still working on me. And I go to church because I feel like I think I'm going to go to church for the rest of my life. I hope, because I love it. And I go because God works on me. I feel like the church is God's workshop where he just gets to work, and he works hard every Sunday. And, it helps me a lot. But if you don't feel comfortable or you feel like you don't need to go to a church, don't. Just start in the scripture, and really that's all you need is the scripture and prayer. And I recommend fasting. I've just recently started that, and wow, that will change your life. But anyways, is there any other questions in the chat before we end? Because I've had to use the bathroom since I started. And it doesn't look like there is. So we're gonna go ahead and end it here. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share with someone you think it would be a good thing to share with them. I'm not good at this yet, guys. I'm learning though, and I feel like I'm getting better. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't. Definitely subscribe. Why are y'all not subscribing, right? I'm at 90. I'm 10 away from 100, and just get me there, bro. Like, come on. And thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like I said, Instagram, Real Jackson Reed. Feel free to send me a DM at any time. Twitter, Real Jackson Reed. Tag me. Do whatever you want. I think you can DM on Twitter. I'm still new to Twitter, but yeah. Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you for spending this time with me.